इधर आ जा, तू आ जा, साड़ी खैर है। तमाम ऑनलाइन देखने और सुनने वालों का हम सबका इज्तिमाई सर, अपने आप को इंट्रोड्यूस करें, आप जाने और आपकी प्रेजेंटेशन जाने, हम अगर आपसे सीखना चाहते हैं। थोड़ा ऊंचा बोलेंगे तो
माइक की आवाज आ रही है? अब आ रही है पीछे? ओके, मेरा नाम बिलाल है। I am based in Lahore and I run marketing and advertising agency, and also I do photography and videography professionally for brands, for different clients. And today invite किया गया मुझे especially photography और videography as a career explain करने के लिए किस तरह से आप इसको लेके जा सकते हैं अपने जो भी whatever you're planning business or being a photographer, if you want to become a videographer, उन सारी चीजों को ये cover करते हैं. So photography, videography as a career and focusing on how you can make it as a career and earn out of it as a freelancer as well. So let's start, and basically this whole presentation is for newbies, someone who is listening or interested in basically बिल्कुल newbies के लिए है ये, जिनको photography, videography का बिल्कुल नहीं पता, जिनको पता है well and good. हम इसमें basics cover कर लेंगे, like आपको क्या चीजें चाहिए to professionally start your career, और क्या basic knowledge है, क्या equipment है, इस तरह की चीजें वगैरह होंगी. ज़्यादा technical वैसे तो इसमें सारी चीजें cover है, but कोई technical discussion करनी हुई like about cameras, about lenses, about lighting, different stuff, we can discuss it like after the session. More focus is on the basics of photography and videography, and then I want कि आप लोगों को जरा business side और career side इसकी जो वो है उसका आपको ज़्यादा फायदा होगा. Otherwise, I am not और इंटरनेट जो आप चीजें खुद लर्न कर सकते हैं. I don't want to get into that in detail. I basically want कि आप लोगों को वो चीजें बताऊं जो आप लोगों को खुद या तो बहुत ज़्यादा पैसे वेस्ट करने के बाद पता चलेंगे. तो I want कि वो चीजें आपको मैं अपने एक्सपीरियंस से और अपनी लर्निंग से वो मैं आपको सिखा सकूं. So let's start. अच्छा, आप लोगों को इंग्लिश उर्दू इंग्लिश में मसला तो नहीं समझ आ रहा है? Because I can go उर्दू में बता सकता, लेकिन जो फील्ड है ऑनलाइन वाला थोड़ा सा इंग्लिश का पता होना जरूरी है. अगर आप डिजिटल जा रहे हैं, पूरी दुनिया को कवर कर रहे हैं, तो आई थिंक थोड़ा सा आपको इंग्लिश का भी पता होना चाहिए किस तरह से आनी है. ठीक है. सो बेसिकली ये फोटोग्राफी आपकी बेसिक्स है. ये चीजें आपको अंडरस्टैंडिंग होना जरूरी है बिफोर गेटिंग इनटू दिस फील्ड. कैमरा, व्हाट टाइप ऑफ कैमरास डू यू यूज, कैमरा के साथ उसकी क्या फंक्शनैलिटी है कि एक कैमरा और एक लेंस से आप क्या अचीव कर सकते हैं. हर कैमरा से आप हर चीज अचीव नहीं कर सकते. देयर आर स्पेशल कैमरास एंड लेंसेज जिनसे स्पेसिफिक चीज होती है. फॉर एग्जांपल प्रोडक्ट के लिए देयर इज अ स्पेसिफिक कैमरा, देयर इज स्पेसिफिक लेंस. Wildlife photography के लिए there is something else. Portrait photography के लिए different होती है. So we'll cover all of that. These are the areas that we'll go. उसके बाद आपका these are the camera types. Point and shoot, basically whatever you have in your camera phone, that's called point and shoot. DSLR is we have those DSLRs in front of you as well. These you can use professionally. आप अपना इससे कोई भी आपने प्रोफेशनली किसी के लिए भी शूट करना है, इनकी बॉडी होती है एंड देन लेंसेज होते हैं. डिफरेंट लेंसेज, वाइड लेंस है, पोर्ट्रेट लेंस है, तो different depend करता है what are you trying to achieve, उसके हिसाब से you select. SLR is basically old school जो आपके initially DSLR से पहले technology थी. DSLR introduced basically 1980s में हुआ. उससे पहले मतलब it's relatively a new field. Photography, professional photography 20-30 साल में ज़्यादा पुरानी है. In technology you can see कि आपके smartphones ही 2000s आए और evolve होना शुरू हुई चीज़ें उसके बाद. Then there is telephoto lens which you see for wildlife photography. Nat Geo पे आप देखते हो, National Geographic पे slow motion के अंदर कैमरा दूर से खड़े होकर किसी शेर की ले रहे हैं. आपका सब्जेक्ट बहुत दूर है, you cannot disturb it. आप उसकी natural habitat के अंदर ही उसको करना चाह रहे हैं. So telephoto is that, and also it is all used in cricket games as well. आपने देखा होगा huge lenses. We have that here as well. You can also take astrophotography भी आप इससे कर सकते हैं. Stars, moon, इसकी pictures आप देखते हैं बहुत आपको close मिल रही होती हैं, वो telephoto lens होता है. Action cam is a GoPro जो कि आपके bikers, traveler, adventurer, mountaineers ये use करते हैं, जो who cannot carry DSLR, बहुत heavy equipment carry नहीं कर सकते, उसके लिए GoPro होता है. उसके अंदर भी 4K quality in there, अब तो बहुत innovations के. And then there's instant camera, that's Polaroid, where you can click a picture और उधर ही आपको as it is result मिल जाता है. So these are the basic types. Okay, so these are the basics of how you operate a camera. ये चीजें आपको understanding बहुत जरूरी है. तब आप किसी भी situation में किसी भी काम को करने से पहले ये चीज़ों को पहले देखेंगे कि वहाँ पे लाइट कैसी है, हमें अपनी स्पीड क्या रखनी है. So here once we go over these, you don't have an understanding. We'll play some videos. इन सारी चीज़ों की आपको basic पता चल जाएगा. Then we can.
What is aperture? Perhaps the most influential parameter of photography, aperture plays an important role in composition and setting up a shot. Let's take a closer look. Simply put, aperture is the hole in the lens through which light travels into the camera body and onto the camera sensor. To understand, let's look at the human eye. All cameras are designed like human eyes. The cornea of our eye is similar to the front element of the lens, gathering light and bending it inward toward the iris. The iris can expand or shrink, controlling the size of the pupil, which passes light into the inner eye. The pupil is what we refer to as the aperture in photography. The amount of light that falls onto the retina is determined by the size of the pupil.
You don't have to write. आप इसको आराम से देखें, absorb करें. ये चीजें इंटरनेट पे मिल जाती हैं. So don't worry about it.
The larger the pupil, the more light falls onto the retina. The larger the aperture of the lens, the more light enters the camera. The iris of the lens controls the size of the aperture and is called the diaphragm. The diaphragm's function is to block all light with the exception of the light that goes through the aperture. In photography, aperture is expressed in f numbers, also known as f-stops. F-stops are a way of describing how open or closed the aperture is. The smaller the f-stop means a larger aperture, while a larger f-stop means a smaller aperture. This can be tricky to remember since large f-stops mean small aperture sizes. So an f-stop of f1.4 is larger than f2.8 and much larger than f8 or f11. Aside from controlling the amount of light passing through the lens and into the camera, the aperture has a direct impact on the depth of field, the area of the image that appears sharp. A large f number such as f16 will bring all foreground and background objects into focus, while a small f number such as f1.4 will isolate either the foreground or background objects and make everything else blurry. Every lens has a limit on how large or small the aperture can get. If you take a look at the specifications of your lens, it should indicate the maximum apertures, lowest f numbers, and minimum apertures, highest f numbers. The maximum aperture of the lens is much more important than the minimum aperture because it shows the speed of the lens. Lenses with apertures of f1.4 or f2.8 are considered fast lenses because they can pass more light into the camera. than, for example, a lens with a maximum aperture of f4 or f5.6. That's the reason night photography usually requires fast lenses. The minimum aperture action will cause the image to lose clarity. It is also worth noting the two types of lenses, primes and zooms. Prime lenses have a fixed focal length, meaning they cannot zoom without physically moving closer or further away from the subject. Zoom lenses give you the flexibility for you to zoom in or out of an object while remaining stationary. While prime lenses will have a fixed maximum aperture, the maximum aperture of a zoom lens will often get smaller as the focal length increases. These lenses are called variable aperture lenses. This is important because for a zoom lens with a focal length of 70 to 200 millimeters, the aperture may increase from f3.5 to f5.6, decreasing the amount of light entering the camera. Because aperture controls the amount of light entering the camera, it also affects other parameters such as ISO and shutter speed. A larger aperture or smaller f number will let more light into the camera, allowing you to use a faster shutter speed or lower ISO value. This is beneficial to eliminate motion blur and reduce the amount of noise that your camera will produce if its ISO gets bumped up. Faster shutter speeds can be essential in scenes with lots of motion, like sports and wildlife photography. So a fast lens can help increase your shutter speed or decrease your ISO value if your shutter speed is
होता है बड़े बड़े शहरों में छोटी छोटी बातें हो जाती हैं उधर रुका है शायद सर यहाँ पे तो कोई सिग्नल नहीं आया ड्रॉप होने का चल अगली पे चले मुझे तो ऐसे ही लगता है वो रुकी थी सर हाँ ये रुकी थी सर नहीं ये रुकी थी सर बट लेट्स फाइंड आउट
तो देखिए ना टाइम भी रुका हुआ है वीडियो का
नहीं ये फॉल्ट स्टॉप हुआ जी ये दोबारा लगा नहीं करें सर जो मर्जी करें टेंशन ही कोई नहीं है सर हम सीखने आए हैं जैसे मर्जी हो बस सीख जाए उधर कर दो थोड़ी देर नहीं इसका असल में इनकी आज ही के दिन अब ये वापस आ गया जब ये 2 बार जाते हैं यार वो मुझे पता यही रहेगा शाम में क्या है वो 1 ये जी श्योर पासवर्ड मांग रहा है कैप्स में
सब कैप्स में
हाँ
एडमिन
नहीं बस मैं ये देख रहा हूँ कि वो क्योंकि वो ठीक चल रहा था 2 बार पे आता है तो मैं या मुझे तो वो दो नहीं कोई इशू नहीं ये चल पड़ा बस सही चले सर वापस आ जाए उसी लिंक पे जो व्हाट्सएप पे था आपकी स्क्रीन नहीं शेयर हो रही हाँ वो नया कनेक्शन हमने बिल्ड कर दिया उस नए कनेक्शन में व्हाट्सएप खोल दें कोई इशू नहीं है टेक योर टाइम कोई जल्दी नहीं बस ये जी 1 सेकंड आज यहाँ पे नेट का इशू आ गया है बड़े अरसे बाद ये इशू क्रिएट हुआ है केबल ही डाउन हो गई है शार्क ने जख्म मारा नहीं वही लिंक है सर वही उसी पे जो स्ट्रीम चल रही थी दोबारा इसको रिफ्रेश कर देंगे तो रिफ्रेश कर दें बस एंटर कर दीजिए फिर अपनी स्लाइड शेयर कर दीजिए बाय द वे ये नेट बेहतर लग रहा है उससे बेहतर
इसको भी करना है इस पे करना है
है नहीं, मैं अब ये बिल्कुल ठीक हो गया। बार सेलेक्ट, तो आप आराम से आ जाएं और अपनी स्लाइड शेयर कर दें। दोनों से कोई मसला नहीं। अब आप स्क्रीन शेयर कर दें। नहीं, ये म्यूट रहेगा। नो पैनिक। प्रेजेंट पे सर, प्रेजेंट पे क्लिक करने के बाद सर वही शेयर स्क्रीन सर। अच्छा यहाँ पे नहीं सर, ये क्लिक कर दें बटन को। अच्छा नीचे क्लिक कर दें सर, यहाँ पे नीचे एक ऑडियो बटन था सर, चेक बॉक्स, बस आप स्क्रीन पे क्लिक कर दें सर। सर बिल्कुल आ गया सर, ये अब आ गया यहाँ पे। और अभी जो है वो हम जैसे थे वैसे हो गए विद अ बेटर कनेक्शन सर। और नीचे सर वो हाइट को दबा दें ताकि बस थैंक यू। तो कंटिन्यू
What is focal? Focal length, usually represented in millimeters, is a basic description of a photographic lens. The measurement is not the length of the lens itself, but actually a calculation of the optical distance from where all light rays converge inside the lens to the image sensor of the camera. So a lens with a focal length of 24 millimeters, for example, would have light range coverage 24 millimeters above the image sensor. The focal length number tells us the angle of view, how much of the scene will be captured, and the magnification, how large a subject will appear. The lower the number, the wider the field of view and lower the magnification, increasing the amount of the scene that our camera can see. The larger the number, the narrower the field of view, and greater the magnification, decreasing the amount of the scene our camera can see. It's also worth noting that oftentimes photographers will refer to larger focal lengths as longer and smaller focal lengths as shorter. While the lens you attach to your camera comes with a focal length, depending on the type of camera you attach to it, its focal length can actually vary. Back in the days of film, 35 millimeter film was the standard sensor size of all types of photography. Once film cameras left the scene, digital cameras replaced them with many different sized sensors, the majority of them smaller. 50 millimeter lenses, regarded as a standard focal length for film, became a short telephoto on the new smaller sensor cameras. This is due to something called crop factor. Full-frame cameras do not have any crop factor, since they operate on a standard 35 millimeter format used in the days of film. APS-C sensors, however, have a crop factor of 1.5 for Nikon or 1.6 for Canon. What this means is any lens attached to an APS-C camera will need to have its focal length multiplied by either 1.5 or 1.6 to get its effective focal length. The actual focal length of the lens remains unchanged, but switching camera bodies that have different sensor sizes will change what the picture will look like. For example, if I have a 50 millimeter lens on a full-frame camera, its effective focal length will be 50 millimeters. But if I swap it to a crop sensor camera with a crop factor of 1.5, the effective focal length suddenly becomes 75 millimeters.
This point is very important when you're buying lens and your body. अपनी crop body और full frame. ये important होता है कि आप कौन सा लेंस ले रहे हैं और उसके बाद आपको कितने mm exactly मिलेगा पिक्चर में. So this point is very important. इसको जरा closely आप देखिए.
एक सेकंड के लिए अजान ठीक है सर. ये हाजा का कोई इशू आ रहा है. इनका ही कोई इशू है, मेरे एंड पे तो कोई मसला नहीं. इंतजामिया में कोई है खाजा के पेज पे? थोड़ी देर पहले रिमूव करता हूँ, फिर वापस ले आता हूँ।
There are other camera form factors as well, but full-frame APS-C cameras are most common. When considering a lens, there are a number of categories defined by ranges of focal lengths. The widest lenses are the fisheye or ultra-wide lenses. These lenses have focal ranges from 8 millimeters to 24 millimeters. They are limited in use and typically used for landscape or architecture. They create such a wide angle of view that images can sometimes appear distorted, and they are not suitable for all portraits since they make facial features look distorted. Next comes regular wide-angle lenses, with focal lengths typically between 24 millimeters to 35 millimeters. This is where distortion stops appearing unnatural. Standard lenses with focal lengths between 35 millimeters to 70 millimeters produce images that most closely reproduce what our eyes see. They are great walk-around lenses and very popular. Telephoto lenses typically start around 70 millimeters and end around 300 millimeters. Portrait lenses fall in this range, and as you increase focal length, telephoto compression will cause foreground and background objects to appear close together. Extreme telephoto lenses round out the bunch with focal lengths exceeding 300 millimeters. These lenses are used for wildlife and situations where extreme magnification is required. Within these categories lie prime and zoom lenses. Prime lenses are lenses that have a fixed focal length. They are often simpler lenses, making them easier to manufacture and in return cost less and usually are of higher quality than zoom lenses. Zoom lenses, on the other hand, cover a range of focal lengths and because of their versatility, allow you to carry, say, one lens instead of 2 or 3 to cover the same focal range. The only drawbacks are the increased cost and slightly reduced quality from manufacturing something so complex. Focal length is a simple concept, but an important one. By the end of this video, you will have learned the principles of focal length and the various categories of lenses that
ये बात कर देते हैं थोड़ी देर। एक वक्त में एक रखेंगे, शामी उनकी तरफ रखो।
ये जो अभी प्राइम लेंस और जूम लेंस का बताया था, दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू अंडरस्टैंड। जो जूम लेंस है, इवन दो वो आपकी रेंज कवर कर लेता है, क्लोजअप भी और आपका जूम भी, वाइड भी कर लेता है कवर, लेकिन उससे उसका नुकसान ये है कि उससे क्वालिटी ड्रॉप हो जाती है। जितना आप ज़ूम करेंगे उतने आपकी वो क्वालिटी ड्रॉप, शार्पनेस उसके अंदर खत्म हो जाएगी। दैट्स वेयर प्राइम लेंस कम्स इन। प्राइम लेंस आर फिक्स्ड 50 mm, 85 mm एंड उनका क्लियर ऑब्जेक्टिव होता है। यू नो एग्जैक्टली आपको अगर आपका काम पोर्ट्रेट्स का है, so you need to have 50 mm and 85 mm prime lens. उसके अंदर कैटेगरीज है, we can go into the details later. लेकिन स्पेसिफिक क्वालिटी अगर आपको चाहिए तो एक लेंस से आप मल्टीपल चीजें बेसिक कवर कर सकते हैं, लेकिन इफ यू वांट टू गो प्रोफेशनल देन यू हैव टू गेट स्पेसिफिक उसी चीज के लिए लेंस टू फॉर क्लाइंट्स टू गेट यू नो पे यू एग्जैक्टली। लेकिन लर्निंग के लिए आई वुड सजेस्ट टू हैव अ लेंस, जूम लेंस 24-105 एक लेंस है, जूम लेंस भी, वो आपको बेसिक ओवरव्यू दे देगा बिफोर यू अंडरस्टैंड कि आपका इंटरेस्ट किस में है। आपका वाइड में इंटरेस्ट है, आपका पोर्ट्रेट्स में इंटरेस्ट है, मिड रेंज में कोई इंटरेस्ट है, सो दैट देन यू कैन यू नो डिसाइड कि आपने नेक्स्ट परचेज आपका लेंस कौन सा होगा।
What is shutter speed? While it may seem like the answer is obvious, there's more to shutter speed than meets the eye. Let's take a closer look. Shutter speed is one of the 3 pillars of photography, the other 2 being ISO and aperture. Also known as exposure time, shutter speed is defined as the length of time the image sensor in a camera is exposed to incoming light. Before we go more in depth, however, let's take a look at the different parts of the camera that contribute to taking a photo. In a standard DSLR, when you press the shutter button, a mirror flips up, allowing light to pass into the camera instead of the viewfinder. Once the mirror is flipped upwards, a small door will move from top to bottom, exposing the sensor beneath. After that, another door will fall down, covering up the entire sensor. After the second door closes, your mirror will fall back into place. The doors will then reset to their original positions underneath. The longer the shutter is kept open, the more light will enter the camera. In auto mode, cameras will meter the scene and determine an adequate shutter speed to keep the picture from becoming either over or underexposed. You can manually change the shutter speed by either putting the camera in shutter priority mode, which will let you change shutter speed, letting the camera calculate ISO and aperture, or full manual mode, which gives you full control over all your camera settings. Shutter speeds are measured in fractions of a second when under 1 second. For example, 1/4 displayed on the camera means the shutter speed is 1/4 a second, whereas 1/250 means the shutter speed is 1/250th of a second. Most cameras can handle shutter speeds as fast as 1/4000th of a second, or sometimes even as high as 1/8000th of a second, and shutter speeds as long as 30 seconds. Longer shutter speeds can be achieved using a function known as bulb mode, where the shutter speed is determined by the length of time the shutter button is activated, either manually or through a remote trigger. It's good to know what effects different shutter speeds have, as it can affect the type of picture produced. Short shutter speeds, often quicker than 1/1000th of a second, are fast enough to capture the fast movement of wildlife and sports, and freeze water droplets and small particles. For everyday photography, shutter speeds around 1/100th of a second are fast enough to keep subjects from blurring. If you're shooting handheld, longer shutter speeds may also cause your shaky hands to blur the photo. Newer lenses from most manufacturers have attempted to solve this problem by introducing vibration reduction technology into lenses to correct for minor shakes. Night photography will often utilize longer shutter speeds to capture as much light as possible. Shutter speeds as long as 20 or 30 seconds may even be used to take pictures of the Milky Way. Knowing the principles of shutter speed will allow you to make better decisions about how you want your picture to look, whether you're freezing the action, creating a time warp effect, letting in little light, or as much as you can. Though it's a very basic concept of photography, it is no less important in making a fantastic photo. Stay subscribed to Apple Apps for more.
What is ISO? While shutter speed and aperture control the amount of light physically hitting the sensor, ISO controls the amount of light the camera needs and is a representation of the sensitivity of the image sensor. As the ISO increases, the light it takes to expose the image decreases. For example, doubling the ISO from, say, 400 to 800 results in the camera needing only half as much light for the same exposure. This is the main reason such high ISO values are used in indoors, especially at sporting events and for photographing wildlife. Needing a fast shutter speed to freeze action and often with limited light available, photographers pump up the ISO as far as they're comfortable doing. However, increasing your ISO doesn't come without drawbacks. Let's compare a camera to a microphone. Microphones gather sound waves from a source, just like cameras gather light rays from the environment, and each turn them into electrical signals, which are outputted as either a sound file for a microphone or an image for a camera. Now, what happens if you're trying to record something very faint, like a whisper? You increase the sensitivity of the microphone. However, besides the whisper being louder, background noise is amplified as well, and you may even hear the hum of the microphone's electronics. Similarly, increasing the ISO of a camera increases its sensitivity to everything, revealing any lighting artifacts, as well as any electrical grain in the system. This phenomenon is referred to as noise in the world of photography. Higher ISO values don't just produce more noise, they also reduce the color accuracy and dynamic range. So you should use the lowest ISO value possible at all times. The lowest ISO value of your camera is considered the base ISO, a term that you may come across in the future. This ISO produces the best image quality and lowest amount of noise, but as stated earlier, low ISO values require lots of ambient light to properly expose the scene. It's also worth mentioning that not all cameras will have the same ISO profile. The ISO performance of your camera largely depends on the size of the photosites in your camera. What is a photosite? When you press the shutter button of your camera, the curtain in front of the image sensor slides up, exposing the photosites to ambient light. The photosites gather photons that enter through the lens, and once the exposure is over, the curtain slides over the sensor and the camera assesses the amount of photons that were gathered, converting the number into an image. Larger sensor cameras allow for larger photosites, which can gather more photons, so full-frame cameras have an advantage over crop sensor cameras. Also, lower megapixel counts mean that each photosite is allowed to take up more space on the sensor, increasing photosite size. However, older, lower megapixel sensors are not better for low-light shooting, as advances in microlens design and the silicon itself have made modern sensors more efficient. So when should we use low and high ISOs? Remember that in every case, you should try to decrease your ISO as much as possible to retain image quality, but sometimes you may be forced to use higher ISOs. Low ISOs are particularly useful in outdoor photography, where the sun will provide lots of light for your camera, allowing you to more freely use faster shutter speeds and smaller apertures. ISO for indoor photography is largely situational. Depending on how well lit the area is, you may want to use higher ISO values. Remember that if your subject is not moving, you can use a slower shutter speed, or if you're okay with a shallower depth of field, use a larger aperture. Night photography, whether it be a moonlit photo shoot or astrophotography, will inevitably require high ISO values. This is where you need to experiment with your camera to find out how far you can push it without serious drawbacks. ISO, while appearing to be a complicated subject, is actually very simple. By exploring your camera's ISO profile and realizing when to use high and low ISOs with an understanding of the principles of image noise and sensitivity, you will be able to directly improve the quality of your photos and be more comfortable with your camera. Stay subscribed to Apple Apps for more animations, which are released every
So basically जो आपने अभी
अच्छा इसके पास आ जाए.
You can go into detail. ये बहुत basics बताए थे आपको, लेकिन ये to understand these things to operate a camera. Obviously, just the technology improve over here, a lot of the work is done by the camera now as well, and there are different modes. जिसमें आप ये ISO, aperture, shutter की responsibility camera को दे देते हैं कुछ हद तक 80%, and then you control the basic things. So there are different modes जिसमें आपका auto scene. So auto and scene are the modes जिसमें camera is doing most of the work, controlling the light and everything. And if you think you need to control the light in your own way, आपको अपने तरीके से उसको aesthetically you have something in mind कि light में और camera वो चीज़ achieve नहीं कर पा रहा, तो फिर you go into different modes, which is P, S, A, and M, and you have the choice to adjusting aperture, shutter speed, ISO, and everything. So आप control आपके पास आ जाए. So that's a more professional approach. I would ये इस पे आप काफी टेस्ट एंड ट्राई करना पड़ेगा आपको इसमें. Lot of practice involved. वो जो videos आपने पहले देखी हैं उनको आपको बार-बार देखना होगा with your camera. And also a lot of cameras, phone cameras have professional modes as well. तो उसके अंदर ये basic settings भी आपको दे देते हैं aperture, ISO, shutter को control करने के लिए. If you have those cameras, you can start from that. You don't have to buy instantly a camera. You don't have to invest लाख रुपए इतना. You can start from your phone if you have a good phone. नहीं तो फिर you can get a camera and then start from that. Yeah, so basic gear for photography. Once you have a camera, you know what you want. You get a DSLR. Then you need to know what kind of a photography you want to do. You want to do fashion, you want to do corporate, weddings or whatever. Then you select your lenses accordingly. For example, weddings के अंदर you need a portrait lens and you need a wide lens. So you get those lenses, and then you have basic lights photography का जिसमें strobe आ जाता है, which basically covers gives you enough light on your subject so that आपको control आपके हाथ में आ जाता है उस चीज़ का कहीं भी. It's a movable portable device. It's called a strobe that is linked with the camera. It is doesn't require any wires or anything. आप click करते हो, it has a sensor on it. वो strobe आपकी light आपके subject पे लाता है. Subject के ऊपर light और उसकी adjust आपको खुद करनी पड़ती है. Where you want the light to be, face पे देना है, कहाँ पे देना है, उसके according to. So you need like basic light कि हर जगह पे आपको perfect conditions नहीं मिलेंगी. कहीं पे light ज़्यादा होगी, कहीं पे कम होगी. तो आपको अपनी एक light या flash उसके हिसाब से रखना पड़ेगा. Okay, so this part is really important. बाकी चीजें जो मैंने आपको बताई हैं, that's learning. Now this part comes when you're practically doing things. Composition, यहाँ से आपका differentiate होगा कि आप अपनी आपको पिक्चर देख के कोई ये ना कह सके this is amateur. अगर आप ये चीजें understand कर लेंगे, automatically आपकी पिक्चर के अंदर एक professional look आ जाएगा. So if you follow these rules, और इनके साथ आप इसकी basic आपको understanding होगी, कोई भी जगह आप देखेंगे, आपके mind में ये rules आ जाएंगे. Okay, we can. These rules basically help you to get a good photograph. You don't have to actually test and try a lot of things. So you go to a situation, you see, okay, there's a lot of geography अच्छी है या उस जगह की architecture बहुत अच्छा है. So it's a very balanced sort of a thing. आप architecture को cover कर रहे हैं, आपके left, right, center, आपकी सारी. Then rules of third. Rules of third is basically you basically Google it and you can go into detail. मैं आपको थोड़ा basics इसकी बता देता हूँ. Rules of third is basically two parts of your picture is in negative and one part is basically your main subject. So and then framing is really important. Negative space is really important. How to use a negative space. A lot of times I see people they either give a lot of negative space, subject उसमें नजर नहीं आ रहा, या तो subject ही बहुत ज़्यादा है और space बाकी use उन्होंने differently नहीं की. तो spacing का important होना, symmetry is very important. A lot of time you see तीन गाड़ियाँ यहाँ से जा रही, तीन यहाँ से जा रही, automatically it makes a visual impact आ जाता है. So you need to see like symmetries, negative spaces, इनकी understanding अगर आपको हो जाए तो आपकी picture will be different from anybody else. People will value your product more than an amateur. So we can share this presentation with you guys as well. You can go into detail later on.
Left to right will be covered. So
Which one?
left to right will like second last.
This one.
Bottom left to last. Yes, yes.
This basically is when you're doing a moving shot. So if I'm like going, so you start from left and उसकी आप pictures जब तक मैं right जा रहा हूँ उसमें आपने पूरा मुझे वो capture करना. So I'll show you. बल्कि 3 days before we did a shoot जिसमें बिल्कुल exactly हमने shot किया. I'll show you that you understand it better. Okay, so this is very important. Like, which area do you want to select for your business or as a freelancer? So इसके अंदर आपका personal interest बहुत important है इस चीज़ के अंदर है. जो चीज़ मार्केट में चल रही है ज़रूरी नहीं है कि आप उसको फॉलो करें. You need to love what you're doing as well, otherwise you will stop doing it after a while or you won't progress in it. जिस तरह से करना चाहिए उसको. So what I did was I did everything शुरू में, and then that's how I got to know कि मेरा passion किसके अंदर है, किस field में, और बाकी fields को I sort of like put it into okay, these are the business side. Like wedding photography is good to make money, but it's in Pakistan especially बहुत monotony बहुत ज़्यादा है, बहुत basic है, एक ही तरह की है. Clients आपके या couples आपके they want the same thing, they don't go differently. जिस तरह बाहर होता है आप different locations पे जा रहे हैं, कोई डेजर्ट दुबई में डेजर्ट में जा रहे हैं या माउंटेन्स में जा रहे हैं, कोई exotic locations ढूंढ रहे हैं, तो lot of couples make an effort कि हम अपनी शूट को डिफरेंटली करें, तो फिर इंटरेस्ट आपका डेवलप होता है. अदरवाइज यू डूइंग सेम थिंग अगेन एंड अगेन, वो चीज़ आपकी डाई. हाँ, इट्स गुड if you want to make money, but as a passion मुझे शूट इतना उसमें इंटरेस्ट नहीं लगा था. Still I'm doing it and it's going really well with photography. So you need to, I think, do bunch of these things and then find out what you love and then go into that aggressively. Or either you want to be a freelancer or you want to open your own business. I think आपको दोनों के अंदर थोड़ा सा टेस्ट एंड ट्राई करना पड़ेगा, and then you can select your field and make your money into that. Also a suggestion कि don't go into whatever is going in the market ज़्यादा. Go for niche, something that is not been done, और बहुत ज़्यादा अगर हो रहे तो उसको differently किस तरह कर सकते हैं आप.
एडमिन वालों को चेक कर लेंगे इधर क्या मसला आ रहा है. नहीं सर आप नहीं आ गए. चल
Okay, so we covered photography. Now we're going to videography. So this is the basic gear that you need for video. Video camera, जिससे आपकी एक ऐसी चीज निकल है which can be posted on every platform. By every platform, I mean social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. उन पे वो जा सकते हैं. Quality wise वो कैमरा इतना होना चाहिए कि वो सपोर्ट करे सारे प्लेटफॉर्म्स की क्वालिटीज को. एंड देन उस कैमरे की क्वालिटी से आप बिलबोर्ड्स पे भी वो चीज़ लेके जा रहे हो. सो कैमरा सिलेक्शन इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट और उससे आपकी मल्टीपल चीज़ें कवर हो गई. Gimbal is something that you use to stabilize the video. So if you use a camera and then shoot it, उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा jerks आ रहे हैं. So there's a gimbal एक है, उसके जब connect करते हो, it basically controls your camera movement as well, and उसमें jerks नहीं आते. It has a very smooth kind of a feel to it. नहीं, अलग से आपको लेना पड़ता है. Yeah, stabilization की एक. And then obviously lens का मैंने आपको बता दिया. Depends what you want to do, what are you covering, उसके हिसाब से lens आप ले सकते हैं. Also you don't need to buy a lens. You can also rent out lens as well. If you have a project, you can rent it out and see if it works for you or not, and then buy it. Because it's really expensive, the lenses. So you can always rent it out as well. And then we have drones. So drones are very in these days since like past 2 years. इसके अंदर भी types and drones की किस तरह की coverages हो रही हैं. So let's see 2 videos which are very in these days. So one is FPV drone.
वाह कहने की देर थी यार. ये कहते हैं कमेंटेटर्स कर्स. देखेंगे सब्र कर जो. आज का दिन गुजारा करो. अभी करेंगे सर. आ जाएगा खुद ही आ जाएगा. अब ये किसी के कंट्रोल में नहीं है आज का. तो याद रखो, पहले दिन से सिखा रहा हूँ कि लीडरशिप क्या है. टू कंडक्ट योरसेल्फ when there is a uncomfortable, non-favorable situation. That's what the leadership demands of you. ऐसा नहीं है कि अगर काम खराब हो गए तो यार ये क्या बकवास है ये. एग्जाम्पल, जहाज 20-30 हजार फुट पे पड़ा है, खड़ा है, खराब हो गया. अगर आप ही एज अ पायलट पैनिक कर गए तो बाकी 250 तो गए. ये बर्दाश्त करें सर. दोबारा इसको चला देता हूँ. नहीं, एक सेकंड से देख लेते हैं. यहाँ पे तो सब सही है भाई. नहीं मैंने कहा स्केप करें सर. अच्छा, मैं ये चाहता हूँ कि इसको आपको रिमूव करो, आप दोबारा आ जाए. आप हाँ आ गया वापस. आ गया सर. अभी देख लेते हैं, कोई इशू नहीं. अच्छा, इसके बाद हम बता दें, इसके बाद कैम में ले आते हैं. ये इशू आ रहा है कैम के साथ प्रैक्टिकल अगर कुछ चीजें वही आखिरी ये तो तंग कर रहा है. हालांकि मुझे कहा बैग्स में कुछ सही दिखा. अच्छा मैं एक और सर आपको इसका आखिरी